I never used to be afraid of silence until it stayed too long. What if I outlive everyone I love? There's a fear that many of us carry, but we rarely speak it aloud. It lingers in the quiet, slips into our thoughts in the still moments, and surfaces during late-night silences or empty Sunday afternoons. It's not about illness, or money, or the aches and pains that come with age. It's about love, or more accurately, the fear of living without it. What if I outlive everyone I love? I didn't always think about that question. Not when the house was full of laughter. Not when my phone rang daily with plans and check-ins. Not when the dinner table always had someone sitting across from me. Someone who knew my stories without needing them told. But time, as it always does, has a way of shifting the landscape. The phone rings less. The dinners are quieter. The house feels bigger in the absence of others. And now, in that stillness, this question lives quietly but persistently in my heart. It's not something we like to say aloud. It feels too vulnerable, too sad, too final. But I've learned that the only way to soften a fear is to speak it. So today, gently and honestly, let's talk about this very real, very human fear. Not to dwell in it, but to name it, to explore it, and maybe to ease its weight by walking through it together. Let's begin. There's a certain silence that comes with aging. Not the peaceful kind you seek after a busy day, not the quiet of rest or stillness. No, this silence is different. It arrives slowly, in stages. First, the kids move out. Then the family visits start to space out. Then friends stop calling as often. Some move, some forget, some pass on. And one morning you wake up and realize you can go the whole day without speaking to another person. That's the kind of silence that hums in your bones. It's not just about noise. It's about meaning. It's about connection. I remember the first week after my husband passed. The first thing I noticed wasn't the grief. It was the stillness. The lack of footsteps in the hallway, the absence of the toothbrush next to mine, the sound of my own breath at night, louder than ever. It's a strange thing, losing the noise of love, because you realize it wasn't noise at all. It was life. The clinking of dishes in the sink, the buzz of a lawnmower down the street while we sat on the porch, the soft murmurs of a shared movie playing in the background. These were the soundtrack of a life shared. And when it stops playing, the silence feels deafening. At first, I tried to fill the quiet. I turned on the television just to hear voices. I opened windows so the wind could carry in some reminder that the world was still out there. I played old records, not for the music, but for the memories they stirred. But nothing replaced the presence of a living, breathing loved one. That's when the fear crept in. Not just of being alone today, but of being alone tomorrow and the next day and all the days after that. The fear that this wasn't just a quiet season, it was the new normal. And with that realization comes something deeper, the question of who you are when no one else is there to reflect it back to you. For decades, we define ourselves through our relationships, parent, spouse, sibling, friend. But when those connections start to fade, who do we become? The house goes quiet, but your mind grows louder. Memories flood in, sometimes gentle, sometimes painful. You remember laughter echoing down the hallway, a shared joke across the kitchen table. And then you sit in that memory, alone. It's not about pity, it's about presence. It's about the ache of losing your witnesses, the people who saw you at every stage, who knew your stories, your scars, your growth. When they're gone, it can feel like part of your identity vanishes too. This is the first layer of the fear, the awareness that the world, once so full of laughter and motion, is slowing down around you. And that silence, real, soul-deep silence, is not just the absence of sound, it's the absence of shared life. And yet, it's in that silence that something new begins to stir. The the search for meaning beyond what was. Let's talk about what comes next. There are aches we voice freely, the stiff knees, the fading memory, the digestive changes that make us laugh uncomfortably at dinner. But there are other aches, the deeper ones, we keep locked away in the corners of our hearts. What if I die and no one finds me for days? Who will sit by my hospital bed when I get sick? Will anyone remember my birthday once the last person who does is gone? These questions come quietly. They visit late at night or just before dawn. They linger when the house is still and the television is off. They aren't dramatic, but they are persistent. They speak to something larger than loneliness. They speak to our human need to be witnessed, to be remembered, to be cared for. It's not just about being afraid of death. It's about being afraid that your life won't echo when you're gone, that no one will say your name aloud in the years to come, that the details, the way you loved your morning coffee, the songs that made you dance, the stories only you could tell, will simply fade. I remember one evening, I sat down and made a list, not of groceries, not of errands, but of people I could call, people I could ask for help. The list was shorter than I hoped. It felt like a mirror, and that reflection was honest. That's the weight of these quiet questions. They don't shout, they whisper, but their echo fills the room. What helps, I've found, is saying them out loud, to a journal, to a friend, even to a stranger. Because once we speak them, they lose some of their power. They become shared, and shared pain, shared fear, it feels lighter. So if you've asked yourself any of those hard questions in the quiet of your heart, know this: you are not strange. You are not weak. You are not alone. You are simply human. And human beings need to be seen, heard, and remembered. And the first step to being seen is speaking. Let's keep going. Grief in old age is different from the grief we feel when we're young. It's not one sudden blow followed by a season of healing. It's not a singular heartbreak that time can slowly stitch together. It's a layering, a quiet accumulation, a slow unraveling of the web of people who once made us feel known. First, it might be a childhood friend, the one who knew your secrets before you even knew they were secrets. Then a neighbor you shared decades of hellos and garden talk with. Then a sibling, then a spouse, the people who were your constants. The ones who didn't need an explanation because they were there through it all. Each goodbye takes something with it. A shared memory, a phone number you'll never dial again, a voice you'll only hear in dreams. These aren't just losses. They're erasures of the landmarks that help shape the story of your life. And slowly, the world starts to feel unfamiliar, not because the world changed, but because the people who once made it feel like home are no longer in it. You begin to ask, how many more can I lose before I lose myself? That's not melodrama. That's the honest, quiet fear that many of us carry. Because love, for most of us, is an anchor. It grounds us. It gives us a reason to cook dinner, to open the curtains, to mark a date on the calendar. When the people we love go, it feels like those anchors are lifted and we begin to drift. Not all at once, but little by little. Days blur. Holidays lose their meaning. A birthday comes and goes with no one to bake a cake or light a candle. And in that drifting, the fear grows. Not just the fear of being alone, but the fear of being forgotten, of disappearing in the quiet, one day at a time. But here's what I've learned. Even as the losses stack, so can the acts of remembrance. We may lose people, but we don't lose the love. We carry it in the way we speak their names, in the stories we tell, in the recipes we still make because they loved them. That love becomes our new anchor. That memory becomes our new map. And though the circle may grow smaller, its depth can grow richer. One deep connection, one moment of shared presence, can remind us that we are still living. that we are still here, that we are still held by the love that came before. The fear may never fully go away, but in naming it, in honoring those we've lost, in reaching for those still around us, we find a kind of peace. Not the peace of having everything we once did, but the peace of knowing that love, once given, never truly leaves, and that even when we drift, we are never fully unanchored. To the outside world, you might seem fine. You smile politely, you make casual conversation, you keep your clothes neat, your garden tidy, your calendar lightly full. But what they don't see are the moments in between. They don't see you talking to a photograph like it could talk back. They don't see you set the table for one, then glance at the second place setting before quietly putting it away. They don't see you watching your favorite show and turning, mid-laugh, to share the moment, only to find no one there. They don't see you pause in the hallway, hand resting on the doorframe of a room you no longer enter. They don't hear the whispered prayers, the names said aloud like mantras, the songs that stir tears for reasons even you can't explain. And because they don't see it, they don't ask. Not out of cruelty, often out of discomfort, or because they simply don't know what to say, so we keep it inside. Not out of pride, not even always out of privacy. Sometimes it's just habit. Silence becomes a kind of armor. Because what would we even say? I'm afraid I'll be the last one left. I miss being someone's person. I'm lonely in a way that doesn't show. These aren't easy things to bring up over coffee or small talk, but they are real. The world often looks at the elderly and sees a chapter closing. What it doesn't always see is that we're still in the middle of the story. We are still growing, still grieving, still hoping, still remembering. So the next time you see someone who seems okay, pause. Ask them about their memories, their favorite people, their quiet joys. Not because they're fragile, but because they're full of life that needs witnessing. And if you're the one carrying the quiet, please know this: your silence doesn't make you invisible. Your memories don't make you outdated. Your feelings, especially the tender ones, are not a burden. They are your humanity, and they are worth sharing. Because what would we even say? I'm afraid I'll be the last one left. Here's something I've come to understand. If you're still here, if you've lived long enough to ask these questions, you are stronger than you know. Because carrying love is beautiful, but carrying loss, that's courage. You've learned how to hold joy and grief in the same breath, how to wake up even when there's no one beside you, how to keep memories alive when the people in them are gone. That's not weakness, that's resilience. And while the fear of being alone is real, so is the strength that grows in its shadow. You find new ways to connect. You find meaning in smaller things. You hold space for others in ways you never could before. There are no easy fixes for the kind of quiet that settles in after deep loss. No magic words or grand gestures that make it all go away. But there are gentle practices, small, steady acts, that don't erase the fear of outliving those we love, but soften it. That helps us breathe through the stillness and feel the thread of life again, even when it seems faint. If this speaks to something inside you, stay with me. Let's keep going together. Start with a letter, not for the mail, but for your heart. Write to someone you've lost. Tell them what you never got to say. Share a memory, a joke, a lesson they left behind. Writing has a way of honoring both presence and absence. It turns our grief into ink, our love into legacy. Give your time if you can. Volunteer at the library, the food bank, the church. Knit scarves for children. Rock babies in hospital nurseries. There's no shortage of places where your wisdom is needed, your kindness, your quiet strength. Sometimes just showing up, even in silence, reminds you that you still have something to offer. Create a routine. not out of obligation, but out of intention. Make a cup of tea each morning and drink it by the window. Take a walk, even if it's just around the yard. Water the plants, feed the birds. Simple rituals ground us. They give structure to shapeless days. Speak to someone each day. It doesn't have to be long. A neighbor walking their dog, a cashier at the market, a child on the street who smiles at you. One real conversation, even a brief one, can reawaken something in you. Connection is oxygen. And don't forget to create. To make something where there was nothing. Paint, even if your hand shakes. Bake bread. Sing while you do the dishes. Tell stories to no one in particular. Creativity is the opposite of despair. It says, I am still here. I am still capable of joy. In these quiet acts, you begin to reclaim a sense of meaning. You shift from simply enduring solitude to shaping it, living inside of it with purpose. Because while we may outlive people, we never outlive our ability to love, to give, to serve, to create. And those things, they tether us back to life. So when the silence presses in too close, return to these small, sacred things, not to forget what you've lost, but to remember who you still are. This is what brings me peace. The people I've loved, they're still with me. Not in the way they once were, no, but in the way my eyes soften when I see something they would have loved. In the way I pass on a lesson they once taught me. In the way I feel them. In music, in silence, in prayer. Love doesn't vanish, it changes form. When someone dies, we often look for them in the physical places they once stood. In the chair they used to sit in, the garden they tended, the photographs that captured a single frozen moment. And while those reminders can be beautiful, they can also hurt. But over time, you begin to feel them in subtler ways. They show up in your choices, in your compassion, in the words you speak to others, words you heard first from them. I've found myself saying things my mother used to say, without even realizing it, cooking meals she once cooked, reaching out with kindness in the way she would have. And in those moments I realize she's still here, not as a shadow, not as a ghost, but as a thread in the fabric of who I've become. Love, when it's real, doesn't end. It evolves. It becomes a quiet companion, a warmth that follows you on cold mornings, a presence that holds you during lonely nights. Sometimes, I catch myself smiling at nothing, laughing at a memory, talking out loud to someone who is no longer physically near. And rather than feel foolish, I feel comforted. Because the bonds we build in love, they stretch beyond time, beyond absence, beyond endings. When I sit on the porch and see the wind rustle the trees, I remember the hands that once held mine. When a certain song plays, I feel the rhythm of old dances. When I see kindness between strangers, I think of the people who taught me how to care. They're not gone, they've just become part of the background music of my life, the quieter melody that plays beneath every ordinary day. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Maybe love was never meant to stay only in the flesh. Maybe it was always meant to become something even more lasting, a light we carry forward, a lesson we live out, a way of being that says, you mattered, you still matter, and because of you, I live differently. That's the kind of love that doesn't disappear. It becomes legacy, it becomes strength, it becomes home. And in that knowing, I find peace. There's a truth I've come to hold close. We don't measure a life by how full the room is. We measure it by how full the heart remains, especially when the room grows quiet. To outlive the people you love is not a failure. It is, in many ways, an unexpected kind of bravery. It means you were blessed to have loved deeply and now carry those stories forward. It means you're still here, bearing witness, still listening, still loving in ways the world may not see. It's okay to fear being alone. It's okay to mourn what's been lost. But never forget this, your presence still matters. your breath still counts. Your wisdom, your tenderness, your memory, they are needed. Even when the house is quiet, even when the holidays feel hollow, even when no one says your name for days, you are not a shadow of your former life. You are the light of every life you've touched and continue to touch. So keep showing up. Keep creating, remembering, connecting. Let love continue through your voice, your stories, your very being. Because your life, even now, holds meaning, and the world is better for it. If this story resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe to Elderly Truths. Here, we honor life's quiet chapters, share reflections from the heart, and walk together through the journey of aging with grace, courage, and connection. Until next time, take gentle care and never forget, you're not alone.